Hello, New York Comic Con. I'm Audible Commissioning Editor Lydia SHAMAH, and I'm so excited to be here today with the incredible team behind the Division Hearts on Fire, an action-packed Audible original drama based on the hit Ubisoft game, Tom Clancy's The Division, written and directed by Casey Wayland and starring KATEE SACKHOFF, Shannon Woodward, Inte Kim, and a full cast. So allow me to introduce our panelists. First, we have award-winning actress KATEE SACKHOFF, who you will recognize from her roles in Battlestar Galactica and The Mandalorian. Welcome, KATEE.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Next up, we have actress and producer Shannon Woodward, who you'll recognize from her roles in Westworld and The Last of Us 2. In addition to her starring role in The Division Hearts on Fire, Shannon also recently lent her voice to the Audible original Hot White Heist, produced by Alan Cumming and Broadway Video. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we've got Inte Kim. Inte has had roles in Jordan Peele's sci-fi comedy Weird City, How to Get Away with Murder, and Fargo. Welcome, Inte.
Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for having me too.
And next, we have award-winning writer, producer, editor, director, United States Army veteran, Casey Wayland, whose film and audio work has been enjoyed around the world, including podcast sensation We're Alive, which has been downloaded over 250 million times. Casey wrote and directed The Division Hearts on Fire, starring KATEE, Shannon, and Inte. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Ubisoft's Etienne BOUVIER, transmedia content manager at Ubisoft. Etienne oversees content development based on Ubisoft's franchises internationally, enabling external creative partners to get a grip on Ubisoft franchises so they can deliver incredible novels, comics, webtoons, and in this case, Audible originals. Welcome, Etienne.
Hey everyone, nice to be with you today.
So firstly, congratulations everyone on The Division's Hearts on Fire. It's been such a hit with our listeners. And we'll dive into some listener reviews later. But first, let's start with a question for KATEE. So KATEE, you've done a lot of voice work, animation, video games. How does audio drama differ from those experiences?
The biggest difference is that there's zero visual. So you're really having to create this world with the sound and the voice. Everything is, pun intended, audible. So it has to be. And that is the main difference. So you're not relying on anything else. So it's very different. It's the first experience that I've had into this world. And it was so much fun. Thankfully, we had Casey at the helm because I was so confused. I was like, what does a gun sound like? I don't understand how I'm supposed to do this kind of stuff. So it was great.
He's a great guide to have through all of this. Inte, was this your first experience with audio also? How was it for you?
It was my first experience with audio drama. And to build off what KATEE was saying, when we can't see faces or body language, there's really a responsibility on us to try and convey all that using tone, and especially with the actions as well, whether that's the physical exertion of climbing a ladder or shooting a gun or getting strangled or all that fun stuff. There's a lot of fun, not so pretty noises that we have to make.
And Shannon, obviously you've done video game work that for The Last of Us, I would guess includes motion capture. For this audio drama, you're standing behind the mic. Is that a different experience?
Yeah, The Last of Us was, we did a few years of motion capture, and then we did like a year and a half in the booth. So all the in-game dialogue and everything is in the booth, very similarly to how, we were doing this. But that was my only experience doing that before. But I had a little bit of like a crash course in it there, especially with a lot of the efforts and noises and things. But for me, I found that like the hardest thing is to it's the same as regular acting in this sense, but I think elevated, where it's like, it's all about not anticipating what your character is about to experience, but doing that with audio and not overly anticipating like where that's going vocally. is a whole other thing, because you don't have the physicality to help kind of indicate that for you. Like, oh, I wouldn't be doing that. You kind of have to do it in your head. Like, well, I would be going here, then I would move here. Okay. And then okay, got it. So that was kind of interesting.
And you're a big gamer, right, Shannon? Obviously, you've been in The Last of Us.
Moderate game. I in the pandemic, I started playing a lot of games because we couldn't shoot for 6 months.
Right.
But I always have played video games. I was a big fan of The Last of Us, which is how I stalked my way into that game. And that's a whole other story that doesn't belong here. But enough that I'm familiar.
Yeah. Any recommendations for us, lockdown gaming?
Oh, well, it depends on like what you're into, but I mean, The Last of Us is great. Returnal was awesome. I'm loving Deathloop. That's super fun. Or I hear WarioWare is really cool. If you have a Switch, I hear that's really sweet. Anyway, that's probably enough.
Thanks. Casey, I know you played a lot of The Division in the run-up to writing the scripts. I don't know if that was the first time you played the game. Was that your first interaction?
Yeah, it's one of these things where if I get into a video game, I have to like almost 100% it. And I will say I pretty much 100% Division just to get through everything and really, understand as much of the aspects of the world as possible, because it's really, I mean, when you're dealing with a game, you're almost dealing with an almost infinite amount of content and experiences, and wanting to try and mimic a little bit of that was a pretty big undertaking.
So Casey, working with Audible and Ubisoft on existing IP is slightly different than some of the work you've done independently as a producer. How's that vary?
Yeah, working with Ubisoft's IP is one of those, it's a tricky thing because you kind of want to do something new. And you kind of want to explore something that hasn't been done before, but you also don't want to break the mold in what they've already created. So it was a little difficult to sort of find that balance and thread that needle to find a good story that's still unique and compelling, but yet still feels like it's part of their world, and get to explore things that maybe the game didn't get to explore as further as you might be able to in a medium just like this.
And obviously you have this amazing cast to work with. So tell us a little bit about working with these guys. How did you draw out some great audio performances?
Well, I will say casting is like 90% of directing. And with this cast, it was a dream. It was so much easier to bring in those performances when working with such incredible talent, because they just have this instinct from so many different films and TV shows that they just bring it every single day, and you're constantly surprised with something new, and you're like, this is great. This is going to be impossible to edit because we have too much good stuff to work with here. But in the end, it just made it really easy to put it all together, and I think the result shows, because every single scene, I can't think of one line that I'm like, that missed the mark. Every line pretty much did. It was great.
There's a wonderful behind the scenes video that people should watch. If they haven't seen it, you can get a little glimpse of how it all came together. Etienne, I know everyone at Audible and Ubisoft was really pleased with how this came together. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what you think makes a great piece of transmedia content.
Well, I think Casey did great with, toying with our world. We don't say today that we are just merely a video game publisher. Ubisoft is really a creator of world. And I think what makes transmedia experiences rich is to have these creators plug into the world their vision of this world. What makes a transmedia universe rich are the stories, the characters that you will describe within this universe. And with transmedia experiences, we can develop prequels, we can develop sequels. Of course, that's interesting for players because it expands the universe. It gives them a new opportunity to further explore the lore. What is great also is that you can create brand new characters. And that is really, I believe, what makes for a rich transmedia experience, because it also gives you material to further develop new stories in many compelling ways. So I think with this audio series, what we did was start something, basically.
So speaking of starting something, do you think there's any possibility we would ever see characters who were created for this drama pop up in games in the future?
I cannot speak about the games because I'm not allowed to. It's a very secretive industry regarding games. But as far as I can discuss, and in my specific field, which is transmedia, yes, I can most definitely tell that with such a compelling character as Hoskins, for example, we will definitely try to further expand her story, because within the lore of the division, Hoskins' story happens right at the beginning, right? This audio series, Heart of Fire, it's a prequel to the Division 1, basically. So we have lots of room to further develop Hoskins' story, and I'm sure that we will see her again in maybe other transmedia experiences.
Great. KATEE, you've moved characters between animation and live action and different mediums before. What's that experience like?
It's very different. It's sort of compounding on what we talked about earlier. When you take a character that's created in animation and then you move them over to live action, you never question how that person moves, because that's not the way that you see them. You audibly hear them, you see them as an animated character that was created by someone else. And that's how you envision them and how they come across. And then when you translate them to live action, all of a sudden you have to realize, how does this person stand? How do they move their face? What do they do with their hands when they're talking? And it becomes a very, very different thing. And it's more daunting than I'd anticipated, actually. I know on Mandalorian, when I put that helmet on, there's like a reassurance to it. I'm like, oh, thank God, I feel like I'm back in the booth. It's like I don't have to worry about what my face is doing, because it's usually like this in the middle of takes. So yeah, it's a very, very different thing. But all things I tell actors all the time that are just starting out, you have to experience all different types of creative art in our field as actors, and doing voiceover work makes you a better live action actor, and vice versa, because you are learning how to use your voice instead of a visual medium, where you might be able to do something much more simple on camera because you know how to make your voice lead the audience into the emotion that you're trying to get them to feel. So it's a very different thing, but it all lends itself to creating different characters.
Inti and Shannon, does that ring true for you as well? Inti, I think you've done a decent amount of theatre.
I have done a little bit of theater. Yeah, you don't have to play to the back row so much. It's a very intimate experience, I think, being straight in someone's ear like that. And I will say, in my experience with audio so far, I'm so often recording my lines in the booth by myself, right? So you kind of have to manufacture that emotion and find the truth that KATEE was talking about, but it's sometimes a very solo endeavor. And it was really a special treat that Casey was able to fight for and secure a space where a few of us could get together for this particular project. And I had the chance to actually see and hear and play off of audio scene partners in real time, much less scene partners like KATEE and Shannon, who are incredible talents and also just lovely human beings. So it's the premium is on listening, and some of those basic things in theater, in television, in acting in general still exist, but you kind of just, it made me appreciate the experience more to have them to play off of in real time.
Yeah, Casey, I know ensemble recording is so important to you. Like, technically for audio, yes, it is possible to put everybody separate and have them record that way, but I know you feel it's really, you get a different result when you get everyone in the same room.
Oh yeah, there's an energy. It's sort of like, it's a black box theater in a way, but the players in the space, there's an energy in that room. Acting is all about the reactions of what you can give somebody. And I mean, the internet is a great way to bring us all together, but in an acting space, it becomes much more disjointed if they're not together. There's just, this intimacy where you can look to someone in the eye and really understand where they're coming from and where they've been and where the scene is sort of going. And everyone has just like an instinct in that room that works so much better. So for me, I'm always a big fan of, like, I will fight to the nth degree of whatever I can do for scheduling, for, COVID compliancy, to make sure we can get everyone in the same space. Because I think that's, with audio, it's very easy to break that illusion of reality and that suspension of disbelief. And inside that space, you can believe that it's real, and it comes through in the audio.
It's interesting because if you're in the same room, like you really get the subtle social cues of other people, even if they're like, they haven't even done it yet in their performance. If you see them, you're like, oh, I know where they're going. You can kind of just like get on their wavelength and just like make it, you can gel better if you kind of get what they mean, even if they haven't done it in their performance yet. Does that make sense?
Well, you realize how much you rely on the looks that an actor gives you in a scene. That last scene between Shannon and I, it would have been a very different scene had I not been able to actually look across the room and see Shannon's face, because I realized you're almost torn, right? You realize you can see them, but then you also hear Casey in the back of your head going, make sure we can hear it, make sure we can hear the look when you're like, when you see them. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I think it does make a difference. And obviously the last year has been challenging with getting people in and out of studio. So it's amazing that Casey was able to get you all together. Casey, I know you teach this in classes for university. Obviously this is part of the philosophy you're teaching students. Anything else that happened on the division that you would factor into your teaching?
A couple things on and off set, just organizational things. A lot of it is, I think, because I also teach the writing of the process, and specifically for writing for audio mediums. I think that the biggest thing I took away from this was working with someone else's IP, working with something that already pre-exists and using it in a way that you can find dramatic ways of making it a little bit better, like things like that already pre-existed inside of Division, like the echoes, where you can witness a scene, but you cannot do anything to stop it. Dramatically, that's a really great device that we were able to use in the storytelling of this. And I think there's a lot of things that can be taken away when you're doing something like this, to both try and mimic and repeat a lot of the audio aspects that you get signatures from the game, but also try something new with what already exists.
For sure. So I'd love to read out some of our listener comments and get your reactions. So first one, I can't believe how great this is. I'm stunned at the sound quality, the performances and the world building and the realism. I asked my friend who's in the military, and everything they are saying and doing is just like real life. So Casey, how did your military experience impact your writing and directing of this production?
A couple little things I kind of pull from whenever I'm action is sort of the thing that I like to do most of, because I've been in some of those spaces where you can try and recreate, as much as possible, the realistic sound effects of, every gunshot has a reaction. There's a shell casing, all that stuff is one thing. But there's also an aspect of the military life that a lot of people don't understand. Like, for instance, in the Division, the agents have to say goodbye to their families. They have to leave home and go off to something where they don't know if they're going to come back. And as a reservist, I kind of had to go through that, where you go from your civilian life to military life, and you have to be able to transition through there. And so that was something that I think I was able to draw from, especially in this experience with Hoskins having to go into that environment. But there's a lot of other things too that were really fun to incorporate, like some of the training aspects where, we have Hoskins go through all these training scenarios, and a lot of them actually are true to life, like the mock town thing. That is something the military does all the time. They'll put people in cardboard houses, so to speak, and, make it seem like it's a real combat environment. Everything sort of found a way to transpire into the story in a realistic way when it comes from a place of truth. And I think that's something that can really be the foundation for something that really communicates with an audience.
And if I may, that was something very important for us in the writing of this project, because at the core foundation of Tom Clancy's The Division universe, we strived to have this realism, to have something which is yes, it's kind of apocalyptical, but it's still grounded into reality. And I think, Casey, you brought that pretty well in this story.
Thank you.
Also, Katee and Shannon and Inte and your performances, of course. I think a few of you have done kind of grounded sci-fi. How are you striking that balance between the kind of the action, the realism, the intense emotion?
I mean, I think just for me, I just try to ground everything I do. I mean, that's like, listen, I mean, if anybody listening, everybody can understand that if you told everybody 2 years ago what our lives were going to be like for the last year and a half, they'd be like, shut the up. You know, and I just think like that's.
Did you just beep yourself?
Yeah,
Yes, she did.
Oh my God, Shannon, I need this in my life.
Oh my
what
God. I
the heck is in
loops? I have the most dumb stuff because the last year has been wild and boring, and so I started spicing up Zooms.
Mind blown. We'll talk later. Continue. Okay. I apologize.
There's also clapping and a laugh track that I have on here.
God, that would help. That would like help my self-esteem so much. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you.
But I truly like, I think, you know, our job as actors is to really like consider those scenarios and consider like, what does that look like? And what does that feel like? And really suspend our own disbelief, because if you expect the audience to do that, if we're not doing that to the full extent of our capability, then, well, it's all going to be trash.
Basically. One more or a couple more reviews for you guys. As a hardcore Division gamer, this Audible original nailed it. Loved the voices and how well it brought the story and game together. I'm very impressed at the attention to detail with the sound of combat and the gambit of emotions unseen but masterfully displayed in an audio format. It's not the easiest to say, but I think it's quite a good compliment. Casey, can you tell us a little bit about how you brought the sound design together on this?
So all of it starts with these amazing performances. Like the tricky part about, you know, being in the booth is they have to give me every piece of the puzzle for audio. Like I'm having them climb the ladders. I'm having them do all this physicality, all the efforts that Shannon was describing to make sure we have all the pieces to make it work. And then we would edit it all together, but then we would go back and re-perform their actions. Like literally inside the booth here, I would have a tub of water with gravel and water in it, and would be walking through the sewers, listening to, you know, KATEE's and Shannon's performance to try and match what they're doing. Every single like movement that they give, if it's subtle, a shuffle of the footsteps, if they're repositioning or something. Because I feel like one of the things about audio is it's very easy to just have voices just float and have them not grounded in the reality of the scene. But then when you can reperform a Foley action to put them inside the world, all of a sudden they become grounded. They feel like they're part of it because they're interacting with it. So all of their efforts that they gave us, both with the running and the jumping and the hitting and all the physicalities, we tried our best to make them feel as real as possible through the audio world.
And actors, any tips or tricks for when you're doing those very kind of action heavy scenes and you're standing still behind mic? How are you doing that?
Oddly, they're very similar to doing ADR for sex scenes. They really do. They're so closely related. They are. Your voice is very interesting. So you have to. There is a fine line. There are moments where you do something, you're like, oh, that doesn't fit in this one. Sorry, we should. So, but no, I think that in a situation like for myself and this is really heavily relying on Casey and, you know, trying to make sure the performance is grounded, but at the same time, trusting that he knows what he wants it to sound like. And, you know, sometimes that's coming out of your comfort zone and delivering something with your voice that you wouldn't normally do.
Can't be afraid to look silly.
Absolutely. You have to look like a complete dork in voiceover. I mean, you use your body, you use everything. When you're choking yourself. It's really weird. It's a little, it's a little odd.
If people see that BTS video, they'll see part of it. What
they will, right?
Might go to.
There's a few imaginary guns being wielded.
All of it.
I look cooler than I usually do. I made everybody comfortable.
Impossible. That's a high threshold.
It's a lot of fun though in the booth because we really do laugh a lot. Like we get to have it's really great because you're in the characters, but you're also with everyone else, and it's really kind of an uplifting spirit in that way. It's just the way everyone gets to interact and play. It's really fun.
Does look like a lot of fun. Last review, and I'll stop showering you all with compliments. The voice acting performances by these actors was outstanding. The emotion conveyed over this audio goes to show how talented these people really are. I think all of those reviews that I just read mentioned the emotion. And obviously, I think people approach The Division like knowing it's a thriller, there's going to be mysteries and action, but it's actually a really emotional piece. And I think after the last 2 years in particular, I think it's emotional in a way that a lot of people will find familiar. So I'm curious what it felt like for you guys to mine those emotions, particularly at this moment in time.
I am constantly mining my emotions all the time. So it just, it's nice to be paid for it.
I was going to say that this past year just really prepped us for it. So we're all like, do you want to talk about what's happening? It's fine. Yeah. You want me to record this? Okay, good.
Can I do some murders? Cool.
Awesome. Get punched in the face. Great.
A little cathartic, at least, maybe.
But it also starts with just like a great script. The story made it easier. The relationships are there on the page.
Yeah, when the writing's good, it does the work for you too. So it's
very true. And having Casey there is so important because he really understands this world. He understood what he wrote and he saw what he wanted to deliver at the end. And so it's nice to have somebody leading that is really, sort of leading the charge really, and sort of helping you find your way throughout the whole thing because they're keeping track of where everything is.
I'd also add to that it's also collaborative in the way that you all gave me instant feedback too, of if something didn't sound right or something didn't work in the scene, we were able to like fix it there in the booth and workshop it and make it feel right. And in the end, we did some lifting and shifting and some re-recordings of other things to make those scenes work. But I think in the end, it all really came out much better because of that nice collaborative process. So it comes both ways.
This is so boring. We all love each other.
Well, I have some to say.
The drama will come out later. Well, it sounds like it was a really great process, and I think everyone agrees the final product is amazing. Our listeners are loving it, so thank you all so much, and thank you for chatting today through various technical issues and movers and pets breaking in. It was so nice to talk to you all. For everyone watching, thank you for watching. And if you haven't downloaded The Division Hearts on Fire on Audible yet, we highly recommend that you check it out, as well as other Audible Ubisoft tie-ins, including Assassin's Creed Gold, which is also performed by a full cast led by Riz Ahmed and Anthony Head. So you may also see additional Ubisoft Audible content coming in the future, so stay tuned. Thank you again, panelists. It was such a joy to talk to you all, and thank you for your work on The Division Hearts on Fire. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.